Hello, welcome to episode 1 of Pax Americana, a podcast and YouTube channel dedicated to global conflict, war, world affairs, and anything else that comes to mind. Hosted by me, Michael Shurkin. Now, the first question that probably comes to mind is, why am I doing this? For one thing, usually YouTube channels are the domain of attractive young Gen Z women who have a bad case of vocal fry. However, I'd like to think that I, or silverbacks like myself, who can bring a little bit of experience, wisdom, maybe expertise and a different perspective, still should have some place here on YouTube and in podcasts and are worth listening to. And of course, I'm doing this for the same reason that a lot of other people are doing this, which is basically marketing, because, a guy has to eat, and hopefully this will help with that. The next obvious question is, who am I? In a past life, I was an academic. I have a PhD in modern European and modern Jewish history. I taught history for 3 years at Johns Hopkins University, after which I had left academia to work for the CIA. I joined the CIA I was there for about 5 years, where I worked as a political analyst and also did some military analysis, and I was trained in military analysis while I was there. And then I left CIA and I worked for 11 years at the RAND Corporation. RAND was a great experience. I got to learn a lot about how militaries work, how African militaries work, how the US military worked, how European militaries worked. And together, I found that this was all very enlightening. First of all, at the CIA, what you get is you get to see behind the curtain and get a no bullshit view of how the world works. And likewise at RAND, it's about understanding more about how things work and understanding sort of the reality behind the headlines and learning how to think about things, how to think about militaries, how to think about military operations. In the process, what I acquired was a vocabulary, a language for articulating the ideas that I have, articulating the things that I saw, articulating the insights, and being able to communicate them. And I found that this is really very important. While I was at CIA, I felt things and saw things, but I didn't really know how to talk about them. For instance, I worked on Afghanistan for a while and I had lots of thoughts about counterinsurgency, but I never really heard of counterinsurgency, and I didn't have the vocabulary to explain what was bothering me about what I saw. Now I do. The other thing is that I managed to grow out of the imposter syndrome that's been haunting me ever since I left academia, and that's probably the most important thing of all. Because without that, you don't have it enables one to have the kind of confidence one needs to actually speak with any kind of authority frankly, about anything, except for those few things that I knew that I actually had down, such as European history or Jewish history. Since leaving RAND, I have been working as a consultant. I've also been doing a lot of business intelligence for a wonderful firm called 14 North Strategies, which has an Africa focus, and that's been great. But I've also been doing a lot of writing on the side, and I discovered that the more I write, the more things I have to say, the more things I have to write, and the only thing that stops me ultimately is both sort of the need to pay the bills, but then also just time. Time's always an issue. And I discovered that it's useful for me to have an outlet. At the same time, I miss teaching. I miss telling stories. I love telling stories. I love teaching. And so what I envisioned for this show, this program, is the following. First of all, I hope to take you all on an intellectual journey as we talk about very complex things, difficult things, and hopefully I'm going to help you to understand these difficult and complex things. Sometimes this show will be chatty, because I like to chat. Sometimes I'm going to tell stories, but sometimes I'm going to be downright didactic or pedagogical even. And heck, maybe I'll even do this in French just for kicks. Hopefully, as I do this and as I learn and as I perfect the craft, these episodes will be better, and my technique will be better, and I'll eventually slowly upgrade my equipment, because that I'm sure is going to make everything better. I also hope to have guests come on and share with us their points of view and their experience. We're going to do some interviews. I'm proud to say that over the years I have met a lot of extremely interesting people, some of whom are not embarrassed to be associated with me. Maybe I'll even also, while I'm at it, I'll escape from the secret lair in which I am taping this. That would be nice too. Now let's talk about the name of the show, Pax Americana. It reflects my historical perspective as well as my understanding of how the world really works. Basically, I believe very strongly in the Pax Americana, and what I mean by that is I believe very strongly in the American Empire. I hope that the American Empire lasts for a very long time, and certainly I sure hope it lasts through my lifetime. If the American Empire were to fall, while I think a large number of people will find that psychologically satisfying, I strongly believe that most people will not be well off as a result, and I think most people will suffer. And one reason why I say this is because if you look at the countries who are most anxious to bring down the American Empire, they really don't offer much in the way of anything good. I mean, think about China or Iran or this so-called global South, which honestly looks to me like a resentment club. Where do our interests lie, and what is best for most of us, or certainly I have to argue what is best for me and for my family and the people in my community. Now, I'm not blind. I believe that all empires are, they have their ugly sides, they have the dark sides. No empire is wholly benign. Although I do believe that as empires go, the American Empire is about as benign as it's ever been. And but ultimately, I believe in reform and incremental change and improvement rather than revolution or just tearing things down. If you tear things down, you just end up with rubble and at the very least a lot of instability. I guess one can say I'm a realist and a centrist. I often joke that I'm an extreme centrist. I'm a radical centrist, and I'm an extreme moderate. Usually what I do is I look at both sides of an issue and then I end up somewhere in the center, which I think is almost always the correct way to be, in the correct approach to just about anything, whatever the problem actually is. As for realism, now I realize that particularly in the world of international relations, realism has about as many definitions as Donald Trump has criminal convictions. And realism is sort of really in the eye of the beholder. But I think what it means is sort of striving to understand how things work rather than having my fantasy about how things should be get in the way of my understanding and my appreciation of what you really need to do in this world. I like to think of myself usually as a modernist or somebody who believes in Enlightenment notions of progress, although not always. And particularly since October 7, to be very frank, October 7 has knocked me at least 15 degrees to the right and has made me question human progress a lot. And I wonder if maybe in the end, the law of the jungle really is the supreme law of international relations. I'd like to think it isn't, but I tend to think that, well, maybe it actually is. And when I listen to a lot of people go on, drone on about international law, for instance, they sound to me like Linus droning on about the Great Pumpkin. I think that sometimes wars need to be fought. Sometimes people need to be fought. Sometimes people need to be killed even. It'd be great if we could all just get along, but the world doesn't work like that, and it's too bad. It would be nice if that weren't true, but I try to cling to reality and to truth. I should say, Pax Americana, this doesn't mean that I'm an American first or far from it. I believe very strongly in the Atlantic Alliance. I believe that at the core of the West, which is also something I believe in, and something that we can talk about in future episodes, at the core of the West is this three-way alliance between the United States, France, and Great Britain. The French part should not come as a surprise. My Francophile credentials are impeccable. Hell, they even made me a knight. But it's more than just France. It's also about Great Britain. And I fret a lot about the United States' relations with France and Great Britain, and also relations between France and Great Britain. And, if this relationship weakens, well, we saw what happened in the 1920s and 30s when that relationship weakened, which is basically the West weakened, and a lot of very bad things happened as a result. And I really think that that also would be the case now. Now, speaking of which, I don't intend to talk a lot about politics, American politics on this show. I do not intend to talk a lot about the presidential election, which I'm absolutely dreading. However, I must insist that Donald Trump's recent comments about NATO are incredibly damaging and incredibly disconcerting. And frankly, it boggles the mind that anybody today could hold such views or consider them to be at all acceptable in a major candidate for the presidency. It's also mind-boggling that this should come from the presumed candidate of the Republican Party, given that the Republican Party, at least since World War II, has been firmly committed to transatlantic security, to American engagement in the world. And so now it's like they've lost their mind. And I find that both a shame, but it's also extremely dangerous. I hope that maybe Trump's comments are going to finally get the Europeans to take their own defense very seriously, because I do think that, well, Trump does have a point when it comes to Europeans not paying enough for their own defense. They've been sleepwalking, I think, for far too long, but unfortunately, I kind of doubt it. I doubt that it will. I'll be talking about all that in European defense and issues like that also in future episodes. But right now, I do believe that we all need to be rallying behind NATO. We all need to be rallying behind Ukraine, and we all need to be demonstrating the firmest possible resolve against Russia. On that topic, I would urge American voters, frankly, to vote for Biden, or while it's not too late, to vote for Nikki Haley. Haley is somebody that I disagree with on a very long list of topics. On the other hand, she's not a threat to the Republic. She's neither a tanky nor a Russian asset nor a fascist. She's not a religious fundamentalist. She is sane. And regrettably, these days, Dayenu, like that makes her, by definition, a much better candidate than Donald Trump. So what I want to do is I want to leave it at that. In the next few weeks, I intend to be talking about Gaza, Iran, European defense. I intend to do a deep dive on the French naval strategist, Admiral Raoul Castex, whom I've been reading very deeply on, and I'm working on an article about. And I will just in general share with you and share with the show all these various topics that end up occupying my mind, and topics that I end up spending a lot of time thinking about. I will talk a bunch about Africa, because Africa is of great interest to me, but a lot of the substance, however, for Africa, I do reserve for my work for 14 North, but I will certainly be talking about it here. Please do look at the links in the description. Please check out my Substack, Pax America, Pax Americana. Look at my LinkedIn profile, my Twitter feed, both of which are on under my name. Just look for Michael Shurkin. There's only like 2 or 3 Michael Shurkins in the world, which makes me, for better or for worse, extraordinarily easy to find on Google. And please subscribe. And also, when you go to Pax Americana, the Substack, please consider doing a paid subscription, because this is how I keep myself clothed. And it's also how I afford the books that I buy and read and then hopefully talk about here today. Thank you very much, and thank you so much for taking the time, and I look forward to you joining me as I move forward with this journey, and as we do the next episodes of the show, which will be coming out ideally once a week, depending on whatever else is going on in my life. But that is the commitment that I'm making here. Thank you very much.